Hey everyone, welcome to the first video of this returning Maplestory series where I journal my Maplestory experience. In this video, I want to cover the 0 to 200 growth of my Dark Knight. As a returning player who has never been able to get past level 140 in the past, I consider myself as a complete noob. But right now I have a bit more time in my hands and I thought it might be worthwhile to invest into this game more deeply. During this video, I will try my best to recount my decisions, thoughts, and anything I found useful during my progression. This is my first non-burning character that I attempted to get to level 200. Burning events shortcut the process quite a bit and take away from the slow growth experience, so this was definitely a challenge for me. I've recently terraburned a Wild Hunter to 200, so I'm somewhat familiar with the leveling and progression. With that limited knowledge, I'm trying my best to put things into practice in order to level up and gear up efficiently. Before I start, I want to talk about the current link skills and legion for this character. I trained this character pretty much bare, with not enough link skills to fill all the slots. However, there are some useful ones that help with the progression, most notably the level 2 Elven Blessing, Combo Kill and Phantom Instinct were either essential or a pretty decent starting point for character growth. In terms of Legion, I think I was sitting at around 1.6k at the time. Also, I should mention that this is not an unfunded series, or a guide for that matter. When I was planning this character, I was thinking about the snowballing aspect of Legion, and I chose to invest whatever measures I could in order to progress the next upcoming characters. It wasn't much, but it still had a huge impact on the progression, and I'll go over that very soon. The first goal for this character is to test out an investment strategy I've been considering while leveling up my Wild Hunter. I want to show you the equips I prepared in advance to give you an idea of where this is going. These equips were bought from NPCs, potential scroll for 3 lines, then a cult cube to tier up and to hit at least 6% strength. Let me briefly explain why I did this in the first place. Currently, the community known tier up rate for occult cubes is 0.91%. which means on average I'll need 110 occult cubes to tier up each equip. OCs were floating around 50k mark in the auction house, which meant that I would need to spend at least 5.5 mil per equip. 50% epic potential scrolls were around 30 mil at the time, so I wanted to see if the 5.5 mil and extra time spent on occult cubing low level rares were more efficient than tiering up faster for a higher price. Also, I realized how inflated the calculations for starforcing costs became as the level of equipments got higher, and how useful the transfer hammer system is. I did an overall calculation for starforcing cost and found that the most cost efficient method is to starforce early and continuously transfer hammer as you progress the character. Now if you've even played the game a little bit and managed to hit mid game at least once, you'll know that the potential lines are actually not that good. The most optimal lines for the weapon would be at least 6% attack, or 2% in this case, and the most optimal lines for the equips should be 9% strength, or in this case, a 2 and a 1% line. I didn't know any better at the time, but I eventually learned my lesson. Another important goal is to gear up with an Absolute Spear and 3 set CRA before I hit 200. I don't have all the knowledge, and I'm still finding things out about the game I've never experienced, so I want this character to eventually self-fund for these items. Actually, an overall goal I do have that I hope to reach soon is to make my first 1 bill mesos on this account. I've never been able to hit that number in my life, so it will be a good milestone to achieve in order to signify my commitment to the game. So with that in mind, let's get started on the progression. As you can expect, the first couple levels flew by rather quickly. I think the general game has shifted over time so that early game ends when you get to around 200, and events require a level 100 character to participate. So this meant that content in this game was almost all irrelevant until you hit 4th job. First job was just doing a couple quests, killing mushrooms, golems and evil eyes. I tried my best to stack my combo as high as I can, because Oran's link skill is ridiculously overpowered in these early levels. At around 750 combo, I hit level 30 and I went to do my job advancement. Second job consisted of Gold Beach, Koenig City Dark Swamp region, Elinor Ferry Academy, and Fireballs in that order. Gold Beach and Elinor Ferry Academy are a must, but I wanted to try something different, so I did the entire Koenig City questline. It was decent, but not as efficient as Rihanna Strait, which I completely forgot existed. Once I hit 60, I did another upgrade to all my current equips, transferring the epic lines and capping the Star Force on each equip. I had to find 2 equips to transfer my overalls because CRA has both the top and bottom, unlike most sets which have just a single overall. Third job leveling consisted of Copper Drakes, Stairway to the Sky, Sandrats and Scorpions, Roids 295, and a Zakuun Run finale. Dark Knights have a decent map mobility, and most skills in third job help train in horizontal maps really efficiently. Since most training maps at this stage are horizontal maps, it was a lot easier to train. Dark Knights are really good at combo stacking, which makes Oran's Link skill a must when grinding out these early levels. Zakuun was a bit of a challenge, as there was some delay between the animation of the hands and the actual hit. I sort of struggled through a couple KOs, but eventually ended the run reaching level 101. In the future, I will probably need to consider if it's more efficient running Zakuun straight after 4th job or just before it, considering the skill points you receive to optimize grind time. Dark Knight's 4th job was fundamentally based on hard survivability and damage output in critical situations, with generous AoEs and a decent mobbing range. Having so much lifesteal in the kit meant that there was never any need to use HP potions, so it made tanking damage from high level mobs a lot easier. The first couple progression milestones were relatively simple. It consisted of Blood Harps, Lionheart Castle, Ludibrium Cocktail, Korean Folktown, then Junior Cerebes to 140. If you are heavily funded and are power leveling, then there's no need to hit Lionheart Castle or Korean Folktown, as they slow down the leveling process for mesos and free mastery books. But since I am not willing to buy mastery books from merchants yet, I will probably still run these and abuse any event shops available in order to level up my skills. During the leveling from 100 to 140, there were some indicators I found useful to consider. Firstly, hitting 55 Star Force as soon as possible provides a huge benefit with time and training efficiency. Secondly, the cost and return of Korean Folktown wanted quests. Completing all 7 nets you around 6 mil mesos, which, in addition to previous Steam dungeons and diligently NPCing gear, is enough to keep transferring Star Force and potential all the way to a decent Pencilier set. It doesn't take that long, so I'll probably keep this in mind for future characters. I personally consider the final 60 as my no man's land, because I ran into the most problems here with training and damage, and also I didn't know what to do half the time. During my training from 140, I went and completed the first 3 chapters of Silent Crusade for extra mastery books, Crusader coins, and a heap of free potions. These potions will easily last most classes to around 200, so it was worth spending the time to do this questline. Also, you receive a free budget ring, which can add to the Star Force amount and act as a placeholder until future upgrades. As with most questlines, a hyper teleport rock is highly recommended, as traveling to each destination wastes a lot of time considering how many Mystic Gate locations you have to get to. Because Mystic Gates have a 15 entry limit per day, I had to finish the 4th chapter the day after. With the Crusader coins, I bought placeholder accessories and spell traces. After completing Temple of Time, I made a huge mistake going to blue notebooks at Koning Tower at a measly level of 149 with 120k range and 1.9k stat. I honestly thought I was strong enough to take on Star Force maps in Koning Tower because I had enough Star Force and my equips were at least 6% stat, but it still took 4 to 5 shots to kill the mobs there, so I wasn't getting any good amount of EXP. So instead, I jumped from map to map, leveling a bit at Junior Cerebes and Stone Colossus. I made enough mesos to Star Force some of my rings, and when I went back to Koning Tower, I was doing more decent damage and also accumulating a good amount of EXP. I think this was when I realized how Star Force maps actually work. See, the thing with Star Force maps that I completely neglected at the time was that having more Star Force than required will grant you more damage for the monsters in that specific map. You can have up to 20 Star Force higher than required, and that will provide you with 20% extra damage, which is a huge amount considering the Star Forcing cost to damage efficiency. This means that on a budget, if you cannot afford to increase your damage range significantly, Star Forcing placeholder equips is the most efficient way to increase damage in Star Force maps. You can see that there isn't a huge boost in damage range here, but when training, I was dealing significantly more to the monsters. So after I found that out, I stayed at Blue Notebooks until 168 and also completed the Hennessy's Ruins questline in between. For each day, I did some boss runs, including Horntail, Hila, and Zakum. I attempted Root Abyss, but randomly DC'd when fighting Pierre, so I kind of gave up and went back to training at Night Stronghold for a bit. Training from 170 to 190 was honestly a nightmare. None of the guide option looked appealing, and I had no clue what to do or where to go. The training fatigue really hit me, and I wanted to do anything but mindlessly grind, so instead I went to complete the grittiest questline for a couple levels. Again, having a hyper teleport rock saved me a ridiculous amount of time, and it wasn't too bad for a change of pace. I also spent some time working on accessory crafting to level 10, trading in the auction house, and wasted a lot of hours familiar farming at Night Stronghold. I always liked the spirit things that followed Cygnus Knights back in the day, and I wanted one with good familiar lines. That was definitely too much to ask because I managed to farm enough blazes and knights to tier up to epic and still got horrible lines. Other than that ridiculous detour, I did the Vox Valley questline, which only takes 20 to 25 minutes for a couple level ups. I thought I wasn't ready for FES 2, so I stayed at Dust Oxus for a bit, which was surprisingly good for early game meso farming. The EXP falls off a bit, but it's still decent getting to 190. One good thing that did come out of making Mesos daily was that I was able to finally buy my Absolite weapon and CRA equips to help train at FES 2 and FES 4. Apparently Dark Knights are very rare because most Absolite spears seem to go for about 2 mil each. After a really poor scrolling session, I once again transferred the stats up and I was finally able to train at Twilight Period until I hit 200. Like I said in the beginning, this was the first time I ever hit 200 on a non-burning character. Looking back, I think I handicapped myself really hard and I made so many mistakes in the process, which I'm looking forward to learning from. Now I want to note some key takeaway points, as well as share some base information so I can keep track of my progression in the future. Firstly, understanding how Starforce maps work definitely accelerated my progression. Now that I understand how Starforcing above the requirement affects damage, I think it will be easier to prepare for these maps for future characters. Secondly, making mesos requires patience and creativity. I want to thank Sean Bob and his amazing video for helping me understand how to trade in the market and how to create your own niche when you see a need. I don't want to get into how I made mesos specifically for this character, as current demand and price is quite high for the items I'm selling at the moment. Otherwise, I highly recommend watching his video on making mesos in Maplestory. It's probably the best meso guide out there at the moment, and it really helps newer players find out things for themselves. Other than that, here are some of the numbers that I will use as indicators for future progressions. These indicators generally help gauge at progression speed, which is what I'm going for. Another factor I need to take into account is probably functional damage and stats per level, but those things range quite a bit across classes and I don't have enough knowledge on these numbers yet. Finally, credit where credit is due. I'm learning off the Maplestory community through YouTube and Reddit, and there are so many helpful guides on progression and systems within the game. I want to say thank you to all the current YouTubers and people on Reddit that actively help players through content and discussion. Some of the most recent YouTubers that come to mind are Sean Bob, Skardor, Maplestory and Copperstan to name a few, whom all dedicate a lot of effort towards helping newer or returning players understand the game better. This will be like a bibliography for me, and I will leave a link to some specific videos below for viewers and myself to come back in the future. And that's the entire progress of my Dark Knight from 0 to 200 in one video. I'm keen to iterate over the progression and learn more about the game as I slowly expand my legion. So with that, thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one.